get drunk. Put the pills in my hands. Don't get drunk. Put the pills in my hands. Too much nonsense attached to bullshit comments. Common sense and competence joining up the conference. I'm the prince of confidence with the mental.
Welcome to the Vault Podcast and Reviews, where music still matters. You can check out everything we're doing at facebook.com/thevaultrvws, youtube.com/C/The Vault Reviews. We're on Stitcher, at The Vault Music 1 for Twitter, at The Vault Reviews on Instagram, and send us anything you feel like sending us, thevaultmusic1@gmail.com. All right, we're here, and we got Robbie D back with us, and he's actually going to be the Vault rap and hip-hop aficionado. Yeah. So he will be talking with us today about, the genre of rap, hip-hop, whatever you want to call it. We'll get into that in a minute. But he's also going to be reviewing some more albums with us in the future, so make sure to check those out going forward. So let's start right off the bat. What is the difference actually between rap and hip-hop for anybody that doesn't understand?
Well, first off, hip-hop is more than just lyrics and MCing. Hip-hop is a culture, so hip-hop is made up of different components. It's, breakdancing and graffiti writing and, MCing. All these things together make hip-hop as a whole. And as far as, the MCing goes, it's about lyrics more than it is about beats. And most hip-hop to me is going to be talking about what you're going through life, real life stuff, and not money and women and that kind of stuff. And then when you go to rap, you get, like I said, you're more focused on beats and things like that.
So where did this, as far back as I can remember, and I could be wrong on this, but all this stuff kind of started, late 70s? Yeah,
late 70s. Curtis Blow, actually. He was the first person to actually do hip-hop live on television.
Was it The Breaks?
Yeah, it was. And him and Africa.
That's the best song.
It's great. And it's so on point too, man. Especially being for one of the first ones, and him and Afrika Bambaataa. If it wouldn't have been for them two, then there wouldn't be hip hop. Afrika Bambaataa single-handedly created DJing and breakdancing. So he is almost 100% hip hop. You know what I mean? Planet Rock. You can't beat it. But yeah, that was all back in late 70s, early 80s. Too Short was even around back then. Was one of the originators from back in the 80s too. So
I didn't realize what year did he start? Because he seemed like more of a 90s guy to me.
Well, he kind of made a change. You know what I mean? He was a little different back in the 80s and the 90s. He's dirty.
Yeah.
Nasty. There's nothing that he wouldn't say. As far as his first album, it would have to be in the late 80s, I would say. I would have to double check to be sure on the exact date there. But yeah, 87, is when.
Oh, we're jumping ahead then.
So it was a little bit later than I was expecting. But
all right, so one thing I wanted to say about Afrika Bambaataa is that was also one of my first, experiences besides a lot of the 80s pop new wave stuff. That was one of my first experiences with electronic music. And
really? That's nice.
I thought it was awesome, the style of that with the rap, and I'm like, man, this is just awesome. And he's still one of my favorite artists to this day, regardless of the genre.
Oh yeah, he's great. Like I said, he's an originator. He made DJing and breakdancing, and that's why his music was so set apart from everybody else's, because he had the DJing aspect in there and the scratching and all that good stuff in there too. So, and then, like I said, that's all originated in the East Coast. He's from South Bronx, so I couldn't imagine growing up in the South Bronx in the 60s,
So two other artists I can think of right off the bat, Grandmaster Flash and Sugar Hill Gang. Was that around the same time?
Yeah, pretty much. They were going to be probably about the early 80s, mid 80s. So,
well, that's where we're going next. So, what are some other artists and styles that started coming out in the 80s?
Beastie Boys, Slick Rick. Those are some of my favorites.
Slick Rick with his slick eye patch.
Right, and it always matched his clothes, sometimes. Always on point with the gold chains, just like Run DMC. They were all back then. DJ Quick, those are all things that started right in the 80s, and even NWA, even Insane Clown Posse, man. Their first album came out in the late 80s, 88.
LL Cool J.
LL Cool J, dude. Mama Said Knock You Out. And then he kind of took a weird R&B turn at some point in the 90s, too. But I've always loved LL Cool J. Actually, I still own his greatest hits called All World, which is a great album from beginning to end.
So the 70s had, kind of a lot of the music was almost more of it had that 70s kind of funk dance sound. How would you describe a lot of the stuff that came out in the 80s?
As far as hip hop went, man, that's right around the time they started, getting into the more like electronic, electro beats is, what they would have been called back in the 80s. But so then that's when you kind of started getting into that. That's when they started using like synthesizers and kind of going that route with it.
So we've covered. I think we pretty much covered a lot of the '80s stuff. I mean, we're going to miss a lot of the underground stuff here and there, but we're just trying to hit the main bullet points of these decades. Now we're on to a weird one. That's the '90s. This is where everything starts getting weird going forward. So, what can we expect out of the '90s? What kind of artists and styles?
Everything came out in the 90s, man. That's going to be pretty much where everybody started, developing their own styles, and you could actually, started being able to tell a difference between West Coast and East Coast, and, where these dudes were coming from, and, what they were talking about. And in the early 90s, in the crack epidemic influenced hip hop heavily, in the early 90s and stuff with, Cypress Hill and Snoop Dogg and E40, the Clique, with all those guys. But yeah, there's so much in the 90s to talk about as far as hip hop goes. Like I said, my favorite is still gangster rap. That's where I'm going to.
Which came out of the 90s.
Which came out in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's when the best of it did. From I'd say 92 to 96 is when the best gangster rap came out. Because then you had like Do or Die with Twista coming out of like the Midwest and Chicago, and and then your Houston rap. You got of course UGK and Devin the Dude and DJ Screw. That's when they started doing that Chop Screwed stuff, and there's just so much in the 90s. That's when all that Houston or Tennessee stuff started coming out.
Yep.
Through Six Mafia and Project Pat and all those guys also.
We missed Public Enemy in there too between the 80s and 90s.
Oh, right. They were huge. That's a huge influence. Fight the Power, and
Vanilla Ice. We forgot about Vanilla Ice.
Oh, Rob Van Winkle.
And Criss Cross.
Criss Cross. Actually, I was just fixing to bring those two kids up. What's his name? Jermaine Dupri found those two kids in a mall in Atlanta, Georgia, and was like, "You kids look like rappers," and just took them and put them on Def Jam.
Hey, I liked them when I was a kid. So,
dude, I missed the bus.
Yeah. So since we're going a little bit all over the place, but kind of the first few tapes that I remember getting in a row: Vanilla Ice, Criss Cross, Young MC, and then Heavy D. That's my first experiences.
That's good. Didn't you have a Criss Cross shirt? I missed the bus.
I had a couple of them. Yeah, I had that, and I had Da Bomb when that one came out. I had that album cover.
Oh, nice, man. That's good stuff.
I wish I still had it.
Right.
Of course, I probably couldn't fit in it. It was like a child's medium or something.
Hey, that's when you just cut the sleeves off it and wear it in summer,
So the other thing that really influenced me in the 90s was MTV. There was more. There was a lot of rock music on there too, and just a lot of weird stuff like pop music and stuff. But there was so much rap music on there, like a lot of the Dr. Dre stuff, Tupac, Biggie, and then I was a really big fan of Much Music, who had like a lot of artists that like I had never heard of, and like I'm kind of drawing a blank here, 'cause like AZ and Nas and DOS Effects. There's some others that I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I was just like kind of floored by all this stuff that was coming out. Some of it was really, really good, and then some of it like the beats were a little too wimpy for me. Even though the content might have been good, but it was just a really weird and awesome time at the same time. What else am I missing about the 90s that we haven't covered? that needs to be covered.
Right, that needs to be covered. That's the thing. And I mean, we hit on Vanilla Ice, but we didn't really hit on Vanilla Ice. I mean, he put that first album out with Ice Ice Baby on it, of course. Then he took a turn too, man, and he tried to do like some horrorcore albums and like grew his dreads out, and like I mean there was a lot of artists trying to find an image to sell, which kind of really blew up in like the 2000s. The whole having an image and selling that. But really, as far as 90s go, man, I'd say the most important things to hit on are going to be Snoop Dogg and West Coast gangster rap and Death Row Records, Da Brat, Funkdafied.
There you go.
Two Live Crew was one we missed out on, from Miami.
Hey, yeah. Speaking of them, that's another thing we've kind of missed is just the 90s was kind of like, I'm going to use some wrestling here, and I know you like wrestling, so you're going to be able to relate to this. So, we had the Hulk Hogan era and the Say Your Prayers, Eat Your Vitamins, the superstars, bigger than life in the 80s into the early 90s. And then people got sick of it. And then all of a sudden, here comes Extreme Championship Wrestling and turns the whole, wrestling world on its head. I think that's kind of what happened with rap music in the 90s. I mean, there was some stuff coming out that should not have probably been coming out as far as, like, lyrics and content. And, what was that? Master P, Ghetto D, that first track.
Oh, yeah, make crack.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure I should not be listening to this.
That song, word for word, tells you step by step how to make crack rocks.
There you go.
Straight up. And basically, it was just like, hey, we're just gonna take it to the next level. I mean, in the 80s, they were kind of soft. I mean, they talked about some controversial things like doing cocaine and stuff like that, but they didn't come right out and say, hey, we're snorting lines of cocaine. They talked about white lines and this and that. And then in the 90s, they were like, we're smoking crack and whipping it up.
Yeah, it seemed like in the 80s, it was more of like a don't do this approach.
Right. And
then it just totally changed.
It totally changed in the 90s. Like I said, the crack epidemic influenced hip-hop so much in the early 90s. But then you have your people like Too Short and Two Live Crew who were just raw, nasty, talking about sex and basically just like repeating porno on a beat as far as some of that stuff goes. And that was huge controversy in the 90s because nobody had ever done that before. Like I said, before that, it was taboo to kind of come out and talk like that. And that was like when Tipper Gore stepped in and tried to parental advisory everything.
Yeah, Cannibal Corpse was on that list too. So.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised one bit.
So yeah, I mean, it was a huge shock to me, growing up in a tiny town in the Midwest, and like all of a sudden, all of this stuff is just right there at my fingertips at MTV to listen to. And then I remember being able to go to Blockbuster Music as one of the first places where you could take a CD to the counter, say, "Here, I want to listen to this," and they put it in and let you listen to it on studio headphones for as long as you wanted. And I just had stacks and stacks of just rap, and it was all gangster rap. It wasn't anything like I wasn't ever like Two Live Crew and like Too Short was okay, but Two Live Crew I never really got into. And then there were some other there's some other guys that were like more lyricists on the music. Just I was into the really hard music edge of it. You know what I'm saying? Like
3-6 and
and the early Tupac and Dre, the Chronic, the musically,
right?
It is fantastic.
Well, man,
so
some of that early 3-6 Mafia stuff, lyrically, is really raw too. Talk about wearing mask and glove and breaking in houses and doing unspeakable things, and that's kind of how they started on. And it's crazy gangsters in Memphis, man. It kept it real though.
So then we get into a really weird time, and this is where I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that came out of the 2000s, like especially early to mid 2000s. What like all I can think of is like Money Rap and like DMX and Nelly and that kind of stuff. What am I missing here?
Well, man, first off, DMX is awesome.
I don't like DMX. I'm sorry.
Oh man, he's gangster as it gets, man. He's loud. But
let me rephrase that. I like his delivery, and I like
There
how
you go.
aggressive he is. But once again, the music is just not doing it for me.
Right, fair enough. Eminem was real big in the 2000s.
That's right. Yep.
I mean, he's an amazing lyricist. Missy Elliott came out in 2000, and her first album was good anyway. Missy Misdemeanor Elliott, Super Duper Fly.
See, I was thinking that was like the late '90s. Maybe I just got my time wrong.
Between like 99 and 2001, sometimes my lines get a little bit blurred. But yeah, 2000s, man. Ja Rule. Ludacris was in the early 2000s. He's real dope. I mean, these are just, I'm trying to think of newer artists that came out, because there were still artists from the 90s and stuff that were putting albums out in the 2000s that were still great, like Outkast and
well, even like I'm trying to think, like
Busta
Clips.
Rhymes.
You remember them?
Oh yeah, Clips. Pharrell was
Yeah.
and
And then there were some others that I just like. You would hear they were like the '80s one-hit wonders,
Right.
but it was like it was like rap. I mean,
there are
you-
so many one-hit wonders in 2000s as far as hip hop goes, and
they all just kind of ran together for me. Like in the '90s, you like each person kind of had their gimmick, and they had their, you could hear Bone and then you'd hear Tupac, and you're like, okay, well, these are not the same two guys.
yeah.
But if I listened to, 50 Cent and Nelly, it would almost sound like the same guy.
Yeah, I'll say this for Nelly. The album Country Grammar, that first album he released, was excellent. In my opinion, I loved that album. He created a whole new slang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's getting hot in her, which I mean, it's totally retarded.
And that's just how everybody here talks. I mean,
It is. I mean, from St. Louis, I mean, he repped it, and like I said, I liked that album. And after that, I really didn't care for Nelly. And then he did that song with some country singer, Tim McGraw maybe, or somebody like that. I can't remember.
That was the start of Bro Country, I think.
Yeah, right. Timberland was real big in the 2000s.
Yeah.
He was Timberland and Magoo. They were dope. Yeah, man, 2000s were pretty rough as far as hip hop went. As
Like
far as new artists.
Dale the Funky Homo Sapien stands out.
See, he was in the 90s too, because he was part of Hieroglyphics, which was a hip
Right,
hop
but I'm
group.
just saying, like I first discovered him.
Right.
and started
Deltron.
Yep. Jurassic 5. That was another one that I remember.
Blackalicious, I believe came out.
Yep,
at the time too. They're really good. Yeah, man. Other than that, I mean, like Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, they came out
There you
around
go.
that time too. They were pretty big, obviously. And you can hate on Lil Jon all you want, man, but he's a good producer. He made some good beats, some good hard club bangers, anyway.
And then there was, of course, 3-6 Mafia, and then everybody that spawned out of there, started changing styles, getting, I think, better in the 2000s. But and then we're kind of to today, where there's just so much stuff going on. I mean, you're going to know more of the newer stuff and what's currently going on than I will. So I'll let you have the floor on this one.
Like I said, man, what I do mostly is I'm a huge fan of Team Backpack, and Team Backpack is this association, I guess you could call it, where they do ciphers. So basically, they're like take these underground rappers, they make them audition, and they're like, bring your dopest verse and spit it on this beat. And they have so many amazing kids up and coming that are nobody's heard of. That don't even have albums out, you know what I mean? They've just done these ciphers, and that's where a lot of my favorite rappers are right now. You've got E-Money and Atrocious and Flawless, Passionate MC, Token is a 17-year-old kid that he just put a video out, and I'd say this kid's the new Eminem. He's just ridiculous, especially for being a 17-year-old. But then, of course, you have all your radio stuff too. Big Sean and I don't know.
See, I don't listen to modern radio hardly at all, so I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, see, I listen to a lot of like 96.5 and 92.9 The Beat, that kind of stuff. Some of it I cannot stand, like Fetty Wap and Young Thug, that kind of stuff. It's like I'm just so sick of hearing auto tune.
Yeah.
When people aren't even singing, why put auto tune over your rap? All you're doing is diluting your rap, in my opinion, anyway. And to me, it's just kind of annoying, and it's kind of lazy, really. You don't really have to try too hard, and it just people eat it up for some reason. I can't stand it, but there's a lot of R&B, hip hop kind of collaboration type stuff out right now, where like Drake, for instance, you know what I mean? He's kind of like on the line of R&B and hip hop or rap. I mean, like I said, though, mainly as far as new artists goes, Logic, Futuristic, those two cats are amazing. Logic is from the East Coast, Futuristic's from Sedona, Arizona. But those are people that I found out from Team Backpack. I'm also a huge fan of Strange Music. Anything Tech Nine does, in my opinion, is straight gold. This dude can do no wrong. Lyrically, he's untouchable, and he's so original. Everything he puts out is different from the last thing that he did.
Yeah.
He's always trying to think outside the box, and you got to give it up for an artist like that, because he's done everything himself too. He's a straight independent rapper. That means everything he's done this came out of his pocket. He's never relied on a major label for anything he's done. Now he's on the Forbes list, and he's doing it big. And his other artists on Strange Music are good too. Cess Crew and Stevie Stone and Ritz. He recently signed Murs to Strange Music, and Murs is like in his mid to late 40s. He's like an old dude, and he used to be signed with Atmosphere's label, Rhymesayers, and Tech Nine swooped him up, and he's a smart man, So I love Strange Music. Everything they do is awesome. That goes with Funk Volume also. Funk Volume is owned by Hobson. And so, they've got Hobson and Jaron Benton and Dizzy Wright. All those guys are excellent lyricists. And they will just say whatever they want. They don't censor themselves. They don't not say something because they think that they won't get played or whatever. And I love that,
So similar to other styles of music that I'm into, would you say that currently it once again, it's just kind of a flooded market of material right now?
Absolutely is. And that's the internet's fault, man, because you can just constantly put stuff out. I mean, there's no limit to how many people you can reach if, you go through the right channels, and that causes it to be flooded and get a little diluted too, get all these people start sounding the same because they're like, oh, well, that guy got 1 million hits on YouTube, so I'm going to do the same thing he did.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get 1 million hits. And sometimes they do. And then,
well, and it's also a lot easier and no offense to you or what you do,
no.
But it's easier for one person to just, write something, in that something that they're writing or producing is most of the time subpar. And literally you could write something, throw it up on YouTube in an hour. And,
absolutely.
And it's not like you can't form a band and make a actual song in an hour.
You definitely couldn't record it.
Right.
And put it out. I mean, I can download a beat off the internet and freestyle on it and put it on YouTube, and about 45 minutes to an hour and have something on there. It may not be something I'm proud of. I personally wouldn't do something like that. I would be embarrassed of myself. But
there are people though that could do that, and I mean maybe you could too in the right circumstance where it would be awesome. But I'm just saying, I think there's so many people that are trying to be internet famous that they're kind of they're just like, hey, how many views can I get, instead of, hey, what kind of quality product can I put out? Right,
exactly. Longevity. How long am I going to be here? And you can see some of these artists doing that, but like I said, most of them are just trying to, like you said too, most of them are just trying to get views, and that's it. Now, there's a group I found out about from this Team Backpack. It's two dudes, Catalyst and Obvi. They call themselves Alien Family. And they're basically internet famous at this point. They have like a mixtape they've done, but they're just fixing to start putting out new albums. And so, they're marketing in that way as well. So they're doing it right, in my opinion. They took the internet fame and kind of shifted it to putting out a quality product as well,
So we covered quite a bit of the artists in the past several years and decades. So let's move over to just some styles and locations. And this is in. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but this is kind of like where you look at country music or rock music or metal or whatever, where you start having the subgenres. You know, when you listen to the different areas music that's coming out in rap and hip hop, it's a totally different sound depending where you go. So you know, I'll give you the floor on this one again.
Man, I don't know. It's tough. There's so many subgenres, and they do them in so many areas. You know, I mean, you can't just place horrorcore in a certain area, but and everywhere does.
No, but the areas have a not necessarily. I guess I should have rephrased that. The style. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you're gonna get your more hardcore stuff, your harder beats and stuff like that from East Coast. You're gonna get your more chill, laid back stuff like that from West Coast, California area, and then your favorite, the real hard
Southern
beats,
stuff,
the Southern stuff, which Tennessee and Houston is big into that, chopped and screwed and. And they kind of invented that too. That's kind of a Houston thing. And one dude that kind of stands out too, A$AP Rocky is from New York, but he does that like slow Southern style. And you got to love that, and you can definitely tell the difference in the slang and the accents and, the stuff these people have from where they've grown up and the way they talk. I mean, it's obviously a way you can tell.
So do you listen to much hip-hop from other countries, or is there anything you can kind of highlight that people should check out? Because that's one thing we haven't touched on.
Yeah, from other countries, not a whole lot, to be honest.
I've seen there's like a huge culture, maybe like in Germany and is Korea one of the like I don't know. There's like this huge hip hop following in some of these other countries. It's interesting.
There is, and like India is another big one as well. I mean, like I said, Team Backpack has done ciphers from people from India and Mexico and stuff like that as well. And again, to me, when I listen to hip hop, I listen for lyrics, and when I listen to that stuff, I don't know what they're saying.
Right.
So
Yeah.
It's like the beat's cool and it sounds good. They're obviously they have good flow and everything. If I understood what they were saying, I would probably listen to it a little bit more often. So I couldn't really name anybody from different countries or anything like that, But there are huge hip hop followings in those areas, and a lot of these hip hop artists, Method Man and people like that, will go to these different countries who don't speak English and are able to sing every word of their songs in English. But can't speak another word of English, but they can sing a Wu-Tang song, which is awesome,
So what would you say to people who are not familiar with the genre? Like, what's some major misconceptions that may be holding somebody back from listening?
Well, it's not all about bitches and money.
Yeah.
That's kind of what the 2000s did to hip hop is put that aspect into it, like you said earlier. And that's why I lean more towards hip hop. Like I said, I mean, they have a story to tell. They're talking about life and what they've been through and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what I would prefer or push people towards listening to, you know what I mean? Stuff that has an actual meaning instead of just rapping about material stuff and shit that don't matter,
So what would you say are some of the struggles of the genre as far as, we've seen here and there some artists have like serious mainstream success, whether it's, a number one hit on the radio or iTunes or playing at the Super Bowl or playing halftime show at some big sporting event, whatever. But to me, I mean, it's just kind of like certain aspects of not rock music, because you'll see the Bruce Springsteen or the Aerosmiths and stuff like that. But to me, this genre as a whole is kind of a lot like metal. It's kind of like we really don't want to pay attention to this, but every now and then we'll get a Kid Rock. So, you know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and there's definitely those guys. I mean, you're 100% right. They don't want to look at it, but every once in a while, you're going to get that dude that kind of comes at your Jay-Z or your Kanye West.
There you go. That's a good one. Yep.
Your Drake or Lil Wayne, and it blows my mind that people call him the greatest rapper of all time. Like, it makes me want to bang my head off a wall.
So I guess what the better question, those three artists you just named, like, how do they get through? But then some of these other artists that are, maybe talking about more important things, or maybe they're actually cleaner, if that makes sense, like something that is more digestible to the mainstream radio listener. Like, why are these people not getting the airtime?
That's because that's not what people want to hear, I guess. You know, I mean, that's how I've always looked at it. People are more into it for just the beat. I guess. I mean, I don't even know. It blows my mind sometimes, you know, that these rappers can get on here and talk about absolutely nothing and people just eat it up. But you show them something with a little bit of content and they're like, "Oh, what is this garbage?" You know, and it's like, oh man, I don't know.
And it's just weird to me because, like, I remember seeing a lot of the stuff that we're talking about that we wish was relevant. Like, it was relevant in the 90s. It was all over MTV. Yeah. I mean, like, you say what you want about Coolio, but I mean, he was like he had a couple of number one hits on the radio, and that was sounding nothing like a lot of the other, you know, he was not MC Hammer. You know what I'm saying?
He was, yeah, and he was even a little bit gangster too. I mean, obviously he did Gangster's Paradise, but I mean, even his album before that was good. I don't know how some of those dudes just slip through the cracks, man. Maybe they get good managers or good promotions. You know what I mean? But again, you know, those songs that they get on the radio are a little bit poppy, kind of like what Eminem does. You know, he'll put an album out, or at least especially his first two albums, where, you know, he had those one or two real poppy, cheesy, "Hi, my name is," you know, like radio hits. But then the rest of the album would just be raw, you know, like.
That's how a lot of those hair bands were, like Poison. They put out Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which I think is an awful song. Right. But then the rest of the album was, you know, not too bad. So maybe the same concept there.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
All right, so we're going to move on to our top five. This is kind of a personal, we each have our own lists, kind of a personal top five favorites. You know, that we're not saying these are the best. It's just, you know, five of our favorites. I'm going to start off with some honorable mentions. Grandmaster Flash, UGK, Goody Mob, and NWA. Now, I know there's a couple of those that probably would be on most people's top five. So, do you have any honorable mentions that aren't making your list?
Man, honestly, I mean, this was like one of the hardest things for me to ever do.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a ton of artists that I wanted to put on here, didn't make the list. But I mean, I'd say, you know, the ones that you named off are obvious ones that a lot of people would put on there. Wu-Tang Clan, you know, is another one that should definitely be mentioned. Slick Rick. You know, KRS-One, which I don't think we even mentioned.
Yeah, that guy brings it.
Yeah, for sure. You know, that's about all I would say as far as honorable mentions go, you know.
All right, so my number 5's Afrika Bambaataa.
Nice.
We talked about it before. This guy kind of completely redid the style and using a lot more electronics beats. And then his clothes and his stage presence and the concerts. I mean, it was just something like I didn't even discover this guy until like the mid to late 90s. So obviously I'm way behind. Of course, I was born in the 80s. So, right. The guy was doing stuff before I was born, but I was just amazed when I saw this, and it really opened my mind to different avenues of electronic music. So go ahead with your number 5.
My number 5 is going to be Greaves. Greaves is on Atmosphere's record label, Rhymesayers. And if I had to explain Greaves to somebody, I would say it's like if you could take the blues and put it into hip hop. That's kind of what he reminds me of. You know, he's very lyric oriented, obviously, and he talks about like heartbreak and girls and this and that kind of stuff. And you know, I like to relate to that kind of stuff as well. And man, he really brings it hard and brings it home, close to home. You know, and so he's definitely my number 5, Greaves.
All right, my number 4. 666, 3-6 Mafia. I don't need to even say much about these guys. It doesn't matter what lineup that they have. I mean, they've constantly put out quality stuff and then spawned so many amazing solo careers from this one group that we'd be here all night talking about it. Of course, Project Pat is one of my favorites, but yeah, that's my number 4. So basically, anything from 3-6 Mafia you can go check out. Go ahead with your number 4.
Right. I want to say this. If you want to go check out stuff by 3-6 Mafia, I hope you have some time on your hands because they have got so many albums. Yeah. So many albums. Ridiculous. And constantly different people. So, I mean, you know, you're always going to get something different. All right. My number 4 is The Click. The Click is E40 before he went solo. So it's him and his two cousins, Sugar T, you know, and they're obviously from Oakland. So it came out in like 94. So it's got that West Coast '94 gangster feel to it. Amazing stuff. Gang Related is an album, their main album that I would check out. But The Click will be my number 4. Gotta love E40.
Number 3 for me, Bone Thugs-n-Harmony. I mean, one of the most original sounds to this day that I think I've ever heard. Like it's almost like a melody singing R&B style, but they're rapping really, really fast.
Well, I'm gonna say
amongst
this.
That.
Bone was my number 3 also.
Here we go.
So, I always say that if Boys to Men was gangster, they would be Bone Thugs-n-Harmony. Straight out of Cleveland, gangster as it gets, but harmonizing and singing, and
and for the most part, their music was all super hard too.
It was Eazy-E. Yeah, we have Eazy-E to thank for Bone Thugs-n-Harmony. Bringing them and doing on Ruthless Records and everything. We were just talking about buying Krypton to Come Up. I mean, that's probably my favorite Bone album ever. I mean, No Surrender and Love for the Money, and just
Ruggish Thuggish Bone.
Oh, you cannot mess with that album, man. From beginning to end, it's great. And Eternal 1999 was excellent too. Mo Murda, and
even their later stuff was good, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad until they, then they started kind of splitting up and doing different things. Art of War was the last, Bone album that I listened to that wasn't, a greatest hits or something,
and it was really good.
It was really good. They had, what's that song from Batman Forever, Through These Eyes or something?
Didn't they have a song on Small Soldiers, that movie?
Yeah, they did.
Which doesn't fit at all, but it was a good song. So
no, it doesn't fit at all. Not one bit. But hey, Bone was my number 3 too. I thought that was kind of funny. We both matched up on that one. But yeah, Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, man, all of them.
I'll let you go next with your number 2.
All right, my number 2 is gonna be Tech Nine.
There you go.
I spoke about how he's always outside the box. He's always doing something original. You'll never hear Tech Nine do the same thing or rhyme even the same word over again in the same song. He's just always trying to reach to that next level and do something different in hip hop, and I think that's awesome because I think that's just going to help spawn new, different artists in the future, people that are influenced by him.
Similar to trying to do new things, my number 2 is DEL. Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Yeah.
No matter what he's doing, what is that one group that he was with that was so popular he had one verse in it. All their videos are animated.
The Gorillas.
Yeah. That's where a lot of people found him.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. This guy's got way better stuff. You just got to go back to Mr. Bob Dabalina or something.
Right. Better wash your hair if you must.
Yeah, but hieroglyphics, and you got that stuff with his solo. You got Deltron 3030, which was kind of like a separate thing that was getting kind of spacey.
And he rapped about video games and all kinds of weird stuff, man. I mean, he was.
Yeah, that's what every song was something different. Some would be goofy, some would be kind of gangster style. Right. Same thing with the music. Some of the music would be goofy, some of it would be really hard. Sometimes he'd bring in different artists to collaborate with him, and some of it would not fit and some of it was awesome, but it ended up all being awesome. I just love everything the guy does. So go ahead with your number 1.
My number 1 is going to be Atmosphere. Atmosphere is made up of 2 guys. You got Slug, who's the MC, and Ant, who makes the beats, also the owner of the record label Rhymesayers. But man, Atmosphere, Slug is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest lyricists. He's just so intelligent and so on point. I just can't get enough of the dude. I mean, he's just so damn good. I'd recommend any album he has ever put out.
So my number 1 may not be a surprise to anybody that knows me. Project Pat. No, the one knock that I do hear from people that I tell them to check out or whatever is that all this stuff sounds the same. Well, so does AC/DC, and everyone loves AC/DC.
Right.
This guy's just constantly putting out just hard music. I mean, it might be the same stuff he's talking about all the time, but he's got one of the more original deliveries and cadence. And
I said, he's still rapping about what he's living. I mean, he's been rapping for years and is still living like a gangster. And so, I mean, how you expect him to change what he raps about when that's what he's still doing?
And he's done some pretty awesome collaborations. I cannot think of any right offhand, but I've seen him with some interesting kind of mixes, and then his brother Juicy J, like you always see him with like Iron Maiden and Slayer shirts on, and like I saw him on stage with a Poison cover band or something. I saw a video of that. So I mean, these guys are just amazing to me. So.
They're good, and they may sound the same in a lot. Like, I mean, even Juicy J, like his newest, he put out a new album not too long ago, Stay Trippy, and I played the hell out of that album from, and
yeah,
you just gotta love that stuff, man. Project Pat's great.
So we've covered quite a bit tonight, kind of given a little bit of a history lesson and giving you some of our favorites, some of the different styles based on geographic locations. Flows, kind of how the beats are, whether, some of it was a little more up, some of it was really hard, and talking about some pretty gritty stuff. So, what else do we need to talk about that we haven't hit yet?
Well, I was just kind of trying to think of some, more artists that we didn't really hit on. I was trying to, try to make sure we hit every, area. Gary, Indiana. You don't hear about too many rappers coming out of Indiana. You get Freddie Gibbs out of there. He's as gangster as it gets, coming right out of Gary, Indiana. And so, I mean, and he's kind of got his own style. Like I said, you don't hear very many rappers come out of that area, so it's hard to put it like, okay, well, that sounds like it's from that area. Whereas, East Coast and West Coast is obvious. To me, it is anyway, what the difference is. People we pretty much touched on. Anybody that needed to be touched on, man.
As far as the main ones, I mean, it's just like any other kind of music. You're gonna start spider webbing out from the main artist, but
exactly. Naughty by Nature was one that we didn't really touch on.
Yeah.
And I think that Tretch from Naughty by Nature doesn't get quite as much recognition as he deserves. He's a great lyricist as well. Yeah. So I mean, other than that, man, I think we covered some good ground here as far as hip hop goes tonight.
So I hope everybody was taking notes on this, and go check this stuff out. Just the best way to do this stuff, if you're on a budget or maybe you're not the physical music kind of person, like I kind of preach all the time, just go to YouTube. I mean, that's the easiest way. Search this stuff. If you like it, go buy it. I don't like digital purchases, but if that's what you want to do it. Go buy the vinyl, go buy the CD or cassette, or if you're doing Spotify, add it up on there. So.
I'm a Spotify addict. Like I have to have my Spotify.
And I understand it. Like I totally get it. It's just I can't do it. Like it's an integrity thing. Like I refuse to pay for any kind of digital music unless that was the sole. Like there's been artists that I paid like very little to get because they released a digital only album.
Right.
So that's something kind of totally different. But if it's available to purchase, so we're going way off the deep end here. So
right. One person we can't leave out, or the Fugees.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you had Lauryn Hill, who was a great artist, and then they spawned Wyclef and Pras. They all did their own solo stuff, and I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't at least mention the Fugees during a hip hop talk. So yeah, that's about all I got. Like I said, I just want to throw that in there before we exit it here. So.
Fair enough. Like I said before, guys, you're going to be seeing a lot more Robbie on some of our reviews. We're going to try to bring some different people in to do some different things. Like I said, he's definitely going to be our hip-hop guy, so if you're reviewing anything of that, he's for sure going to be in here. But we're also going to cover some other genres as well because pretty much everybody here at the Vault is all kind of we all like different things, and we're all accepting to different things. So look forward to that. So tell everybody where they can find you and where they can check out some of your music.
Yeah, man, just soundcloud.com/RobNoxious421. That's where all my music is. So you can definitely find it all there. Listen to it, download it, share it, do whatever you'd like with it. I'm also on Twitter, and then that's @Obnoxious420. So those are two places that you can definitely find me. But the SoundCloud is the best one as far as music goes.
All right, everybody, thanks for checking this out. And until we do the next show, see ya.